Hello, mate.
Hi, Phil.
How are you doing?
I'm good, thank you. How are you?
I'm great, thanks.
Good to hear. Really do appreciate your time coming on today. Thank you very much.
Oh, you're so
Um,
welcome.
and welcome to the Roundabout podcast. Um, I think it'd just be really interesting to get your perspective on things really from a nutrition point of view. But just to give you a bit of background, the podcast is going to be based on mental health and physical health and overall well-being. So I thought it'd be a really good benefit to people to sort of get an understanding from your side. So if you don't mind, would you be able to sort of just give us an introduction about yourself and what led you on this path of knowledge?
Yeah, sure. Glad to. Well, I'll be as brief as I can on that. My story's out there all over the place, I think. But I've well, for many years, decades actually, I was vegetarian and vegan, all sorts of plant-based, writing even books and articles and whatever about it and how incredibly healthy it was and how spiritual it was and all that sort of thing. And then in 2010, I ended up with sort of full-blown psoriatic arthritis, which is basically exactly like rheumatoid arthritis, but they have these funny diagnoses, you know, when autoimmunity is really, all of it is the same thing manifesting in different parts of the body.
Yeah.
And my initial reaction, because of my previous brainwashing, was to go raw vegan and ended up, it's still the same kind of pain, but with tremendous emaciation, went down to sort of 9 stone or sort of 120 odd pounds in other money, and had all the same issues and kidney stones, and you know, it was a wrong move. And then finally I figured out about how we really are designed to eat meat, and so I started eating a lot more, but I was combining it with a few veg and sort of coconut oil, olive oil, things like that. You know, it was a keto diet, and that was great. That had a lot of benefits, and with lots of other interventions, I pretty much got well by the time I think it was 2014 or so when I wrote my book that's called Arthritis: The Best Thing That Ever Happened to Me. But then in 2015, I decided, I started to hear these whisperings about the carnivore diet, where, you know, you drop everything but meat. And so in 2015, I did that. And the difference was extraordinary, as much or even more, well, often a lot more, as I've seen in clients of mine, than the jump from an ordinary diet to a keto diet. Just those last few veg going in the bin seems to be really spectacular in its effect. And I've done that for about 6 years now, and you know, I'm still alive, which is obviously very strange, because if anything that the 5 a day people and classic information and vegans said would be completely impossible. We just see this so much, and then when you see the sort of history of it, of how we've been fooled with diet on all levels, whether it's coming from the mainstream or religion or sort of spiritual people, or the controllers that are causing mayhem on the planet at the moment. But I won't get your channel pulled by going too far into that, because I've had a few videos pulled. But when you know, you see what these people are pushing, it's pretty much, if you do the exact opposite, then you seem to get this sort of radiant health. And it's something I wish I'd known so many years ago. You know, in the late 90s, I was running a gym and I got pretty big, but it took an enormous amount of work and an enormous amount of mountain bike riding and whatever to stay reasonably lean. On the diet that I was on, I knew how to train, but I didn't know how to eat. And if I'd known about the carnivore thing then, I mean, I already had a few aches and pains and things. I looked pretty good, but when I stopped training, I definitely didn't by 2010, when I got really sick and I was a big fatty, and lost about 90 pounds doing all this keto and carnivore thing. And if I'd have known that, and now, you know, I remain effortlessly lean. I'm 60 next year, and I sort of think I wish I'd known about it a long time before. But I guess everything happens for a reason, and it's nice that I made all those mistakes, because what I love doing now is just helping people out with this. And when they make a mistake, I can tell them I know about that, you know, not just, oh, it might be good, it might not be. I've done it, and I've had the kidney stones, I've had the liver problems, I've had the arthritis, I've had the obesity, I've had everything, you know, in my time, and the emaciation. So it's been an interesting journey. So that's where it's come from, really.
How long did it take from when you went on the carnivore diet, how long did it take to fully recover?
Well, it's difficult with me because I went about it in the wrong way, where I would sort of take one food out to see if it worked. Really, you need to go back to basics. And although it's probably going to be a contentious issue, but a basic human diet that poses the least challenge to the body is fatty red meat. So beef, lamb, salt and water, and that's it. And I never did that. So I did it when I'd already done enough to get 80% better, 90% better from other faffing about, you know. But it's difficult to say how long it took. I mean, as soon as I went carnivore, it was everything was absolutely fine, and other things that were not really bothering me so much as sort of crippling arthritis, other things cleared up. Little things like sinus issues, that kind of thing, brain fog now and again, those sort of things. But it's become more clear to me with working with clients where if they come to me newly diagnosed and they haven't been on the meds, then, you know, great benefits within 30 days, spectacular benefits at around 90 days. If they've taken a load of you know, poisonous meds, it can take a lot longer because the body's coming off those too, and they cause tremendous damage and leaky gut and whatever. But I can see how it's happening. I have a friend, Zofia Clements, Dr. Zofia Clements, a paleomediciner in Hungary. She was a speaker at our last carnivore conference, and she's just lovely. But the results they're having there, nothing else. They're not dealing with all the other ancestral disconnects like artificial light, emotional issues, EMFs, grounding, sunshine exposure, you know, all of these wonderful things that are just as important as diet, really. But they're just dealing with the diet, putting them on a very, very high fat, purely carnivore diet. And the results they're having in even difficult cancers like glioblastomas and whatever, the sort of brain cancers that are the horrible sort of definite death according to the medical system, you know, they're having results with that. And then autoimmunity all the time. But they're showing with gut permeability tests, the PEG tests, that even if there are a few plants left in the diet, the gut never truly heals. And the leaky gut is really at the root of all autoimmunity. Well, actually, mitochondrial dysfunction is at the root of all autoimmunity and all disease. But on a little bit further down the stream, leaky gut is what causes all the issues with things getting through into the bloodstream that shouldn't be there, and the body misidentifying certain tissues in the body that resemble it and then attacking them. You know, the docs say autoimmunity is the body attacking itself, but it isn't. It's not that stupid. But so that's where the misconception comes from. But you know, the better researchers that aren't caught up in the mainstream dogma are finding out about this now. And I know it's quite a challenge for a lot of people to think that you can survive on only meat, let alone thrive. But, you know, if you look at our ancestry, you got the Inuit, the Sami, the Maasai, all robustly healthy until our grains and seed oils came in, and then that wrecked their health. But, you know, normally brought in by missionaries and sort of supposedly well-meaning people, but not really.
I live on keto diet, but I still have quite a lot of fats. So I'll have avocado, nuts, seeds, cheese. So yeah, I'm sort of like, I'd say I'm 70% better off than I was. I started this at the start of the year. But yeah, I've had huge benefits from it. because I had arthritis in my back, between my vertebrae. So from where I was last year, I'm in a much better position now, just off doing this and cutting out certain foods and certain like processed sugars and processed food. I just try and stay away from that as much as I can. Anything that's man-made. I try and stay as natural as possible, but yeah, I haven't fully transitioned to carnivore. I haven't tried that yet. Is something I am going to try. But yeah, I've started organic as well, so I make sure everything's grass fed, and I go to local farms for my food. So I feel like that's had a positive to me health. And as well, since cutting out sugars, like I've just had so much more energy and focus, and I'm able to concentrate a lot better. Everything's working much better than it was. But from what I was looking at as well, there's certain, I mean, vegans argue that, you know, they can get the same nutrients. I don't know how, you obviously know more than me, but from what I've been looking at, you know, you don't get B12 from being a vegan, and vitamin D3 and iron. Could you sort of talk about that a bit more, about what nutrients you don't get as a
yeah,
vegan?
1 sec. I'm just going to silence and just shout my daughter a sec. Someone's at the door, and my daughter can sort it out. Hang on.
No worries.
Yeah, well, you know, the problem is with plants, I'm not really brilliant at all the deep science about the individual nutrients, but I would say, if anybody wants to look into that very deeply, to go and research a doctor called Dr. Paul Saladino. You know, he will come up with the most amazing science of it, you know. So it doesn't need that deep science, though, really. It's really quite simple, that the nutrients in plants are not so bioavailable, you know. They're wrapped up in indigestible cellulose, and plants contain a lot of anti-nutrients. So this is just that plants don't have teeth and claws to defend themselves, and they don't want to be eaten. There are certain parts of the plant that want to be eaten, like fruits and nuts. They're designed to be eaten, but the leaves and the stalks and the tubers, to a lesser extent, are not designed to be eaten. And within those, particularly the leaves and stalks, you get some really pretty terrible toxins. You know, we're all educated to believe that these strange vegetables that are in our supermarkets, none of which existed more than about 200 years ago or something, and none of our ancestors ever ate, are essential to our health. It's very strange. They're all kind of man-made species, and they do contain toxins. You have particularly, you know, I won't go into them all, but you've got oxalates, just to explain that, because we're so obsessed with green veg, must be very healthy, you know, green leafy veg. And it's full of oxalate, full of other things, but it's full of oxalates. And I've been there juicing up spinach and had kidney stones. And then the doc said, oh, well, you'll never be able to eat meat again, you know, or at least keep it to a minimum. And I've eaten nothing but meat for 6 years, and I've had no more kidney stones. And it was from oxalate dumping, from juicing up spinach and eating turmeric and things like that, all the high oxalate foods. But you can't, whatever's on paper in a plant is just not bioavailable. There was a really interesting study that illustrated this, where they took 3 groups of people to find out how much the body increased its levels of zinc when they were fed oysters. So they got one group of people and fed them just oysters, and a second group of people oysters and black beans, and a third group of people oysters and tortillas, I think, some wheat-based thing anyway, so corn-based thing. And the first group just eating oysters, the zinc levels shot up. With the black beans, raised up a little bit, and with the tortillas, there was no increase in zinc levels. So even if you eat really good foods, And this is one of the mistakes of vegetarians when they get a bit sick and they think, oh right, I'll add a bit of chicken and fish, you know, and they're still eating all the other crap. They're still eating all the other rice and breads and pastas and whatever. And it does very little. In fact, they're not, their guts are not adapted to it. So it makes them feel worse often, because they have problems digesting it because they haven't eaten it for a while. So it's not about eating meat. It's about cutting as many plants as you can. I mean, you know, I'm not dogmatic. I think everybody should enjoy whatever they want to eat. And if they want to go out for massive, great, all-you-can-eat pizza binges like I used to, you know, go for it. And then when it hits, just be educated enough that don't go for the mainstream, eat loads of fruit and veg to heal. And certainly don't go down the vegan route, because you'll end up in serious trouble. And one of the most dangerous things about the vegan route is that it takes out a lot of processed foods. So unless you're living on those poisonous Beyond burgers or whatever, but it takes out a lot of the processed foods. So there is a honeymoon period and people can feel a lot better immediately. But then there is a problem, particularly with plant toxins building up and deuterium. And this is something I'd make people aware of. And it's something that really, if you look at it through this lens of understanding what deuterium is, it makes everything make sense in the diet world, really. Now, deuterium is an extra isotope on hydrogen that creates a heavy water, D2O, rather than H2O. And this heavy water, if it's in a high percentage in our water, blocks up the little nanomotors in the mitochondria and causes dysfunction. If your mitochondria blow up, then basically it's autoimmunity, cancer, all kinds of things, especially cancer. And people just drinking deuterium depleted water are having incredible results with getting rid of cancer. It could be really the key of what's causing this mitochondrial issue, because cancer is not a genetic thing. It's a mitochondrial issue. So if you clean up the mitochondria, then it's very unlikely you're going to get cancer, and very often you can reverse it. So what causes what is a diet that is low in deuterium? Well, it's a high fat animal based diet. The saturated fats, which never ever caused heart disease, in ruminant animals, grass-fed ruminant animals, causes the cells to produce their own deuterium depleted water. Now I go into the deuterium thing because this is the problem. Even the plants, the parts of the plant that we are supposed to eat, like, you know, fruits and nuts, and to a lesser extent seeds, because seeds really are, they have pretty much the same effect as grains. But the reproductive parts of plants are very high in deuterium. Now, nature gives them to us seasonally when there's a lot of sunshine, and sunshine depletes deuterium, being outside depletes deuterium, blah, blah, blah. So you can see that as well as just the sugars, the problem with fruit and things like that is that if you're eating a banana flown in from the other side of the world in the dark, or in the winter under artificial light in the north of England where we are, it's not a health food. You know, it's not a health food at all. And you're going to be really increasing your cellular deuterium. The body can deplete it when it comes in via carbohydrates, but not if there's a big overload. But the big problem, the worst thing that we have ever invented, way worse than grains or carbohydrates or anything like that, which really, you know, carbohydrates as such are not that bad if they're eaten in the right circumstance. The problem is seed oils. And those seed oils are utterly devastating, and they're very high in deuterium. And when a lot of people who understand how bad seed oils are in the keto and paleo and carnivore communities understand it from the inflammatory omega-6s, the linoleic acid in there, but they don't understand it from the level of deuterium. And if you're taking in the deuterium from seed oils, the body does not know how to deal with it, and they can't get rid of it. And this is why it's so massively carcinogenic. And so those are the sort of areas I think that a lot of people don't grasp. Basically, that fruit is okay to eat in season if you're healthy. If you're reversing a chronic disease, probably best not to. All those vegetables, you know, the goitrogens that blow up your thyroid in broccoli and cauliflower, the nightshade components that wreck your joints in the nightshade vegetables, potatoes, tomatoes, aubergines, peppers, that kind of thing. You know, people aren't aware of that. It's just, oh, fruit and veg is very healthy. it's a load of nonsense that was made up by a couple of marketers and sketched out on the back of a fag packet in a taxi, you know, eat 5 a day, and it's absolute nonsense. Eat whatever you like, you know. I'm not like a militant vegan, that the ones that send me death threats on my YouTube channel, you know, and everybody has to eat like that. I think everybody should do what they want, but if we're educated, you know, we all know that smoking and drinking isn't that great, but people do it now and again, informed, and make an informed decision. It's your body, you know, eat what you like. But if you get in real trouble with cancer or autoimmunity, don't go down a plant-based route, and understand why, because it's full of deuterium, it's full of plant toxins, and meat isn't. And, you know, I mean, I would have been dead probably, you know, 5 years and 10 months ago, as a gorilla would be, on the diet that I've eaten. But really, our digestive systems are more like a hyena. We're a facultative carnivore with digestive system more acidic than even an obligate carnivore like a cat or a lion. And we can survive on plants for short periods of time. They're starvation food, basically. But you look at what hunter-gatherer tribes eat and what they've always eaten, and they've never had our issues. And you know, it's time to, if you looked at the food pyramid, the diet science, all that crap out there, and did exactly the opposite of everything they say, you'd probably be pretty close.
Yeah, I'm just thinking, do you think, so where you mentioned starvation food, plants and whatever, do you think in certain parts of the globe, so say like people have a different, you know, they adapt to the environment, habitat. Do you think certain ancestors was eating more plants because they had to, or and just a thought, like, do you think certain our bodies adapted in a certain way in different areas?
Yeah, they do. But you find the places where they eat a lot of plants but still have good health and long lives, where with the vegans and whatever, people like T. Colin Campbell wrote the China study, and Dan Buettner wrote the Blue Zones, and they misrepresented the data a lot from those places, because they didn't eat a plant-based diet. They ate a few plants, they ate quite a lot of plants, some of them, but they all ate meat, and they pretended they didn't. And they were in areas basically where there's low deuterium water. This is an absolute key. And they were in areas where there's good outside life, you know, outdoor lifestyle. There's good social interaction. There's much more to it than diet. But to answer your question specifically, Weston Price went around the world early last century. He was a dentist, and he had no agenda, you know, there was no government dietary guidelines or anything back then. And he went around the world to see the effect of different indigenous diets on dental health. And he found, you know, that none of these people have the epidemics of cancer and diabetes and heart disease and all that sort of thing that we have. But he observed that there were the tribes that ate the most plants had the most tooth decay, the cavities, and the worst general health. Now, that's not anything like our bad general health, but it's a little bit bad. And sometimes they were in the same areas. And now there's if anybody's interested, if you go to Brian Sanders's Peak Human podcast and see episodes, gosh, see if I can remember this. I think it's around 116, 117, 119 and 120. And they've just been out visiting the Hadza and the Maasai and all of that sort of thing in Africa. In Tanzania, and they found that the people who eat the most meat and the fewest plants are still the healthiest. You know, they've got a great picture there of 6 generations of one family, you know, and the old lady, she's 120, her daughter's 90, this sort of thing. People say, oh, these indigenous people don't live long. No, the average is brought down by infant mortality and whatever. So, you know, the average of 0 and 100 is 50. And so they say, oh, look, they live to 50. No, there's plenty at 100. And when they're 100, they are very, very fit. They're not in wheelchairs and on life supports and whatever, like they are in our society. So this 120-year-old lady was pogoing around with the rest of the Maasai. She was fine, you know. And this is quite clearly seen when you see people on different diets in the same part of the world. Because I take your point. you can take more plants and be damaged by them less when you're nearer the equator. The further south you go, as nature provides them, nature always knows best, you will be damaged by them less. Like if you're an Inuit, you're not going to be able to find mangoes and stuff all the time. You're not going to be eating that stuff. It doesn't happen. They are pretty much 100% carnivore. And some people go, oh, they eat loads of berries. Well, they don't. They're available for maybe a couple of weeks in the season. And a lot of them up there don't bother. But if you do eat a Western diet in the Arctic, say you've got twins and put one twin in the Arctic and one on the equator and gave them a really horrific Western diet, the one in the Arctic would probably die quicker, because it's not so much to do with adaptation to the diet, but to do with environment and latitude. Like if you take a Maasai, you know, and put them up, or no, Maasai is a bad example because they already eat meat. But if you take one of the tribes people that eat a lot of plants and put them up in the Arctic and gave them that diet, they wouldn't be that well. But if they went onto the Arctic, you know, the Inuit diet, they would be great. As the polar explorers found out, you know, when they went up there, and it's even a cure for scurvy. You don't need vitamin C, overt vitamin C anyway, when you're on a carnivore diet, because carbohydrates compete for the same pathway as vitamin C. So the old ship's captains knew that fresh meat would not only prevent scurvy, it would cure it. And the people who took up the sort of biscuits and dried meat and grains and whatever they had, they got scurvy pretty quick on these Arctic expeditions. But the ones who went over to the meat diets, the local diet, their scurvy went away pretty quickly. And this is all documented, but it's kind of covered up now and say, oh, you've got to have limes and, you know, you've got to do this and that. No, they knew that the meat sorted it out. So you are right that you can get away with it, and there are tribes that eat that stuff, but I believe they're healthy despite them, not because of them. They're never the most prized food in any culture, even the ones who eat that stuff, you know. And also they eat less than you think. It's interesting to compare the Hadza and the Maasai. Like a lot of our obsession with the microbiome has come from studies of the Hadza, where they have a very wide microbiome, very diverse microbiome. And they eat some plants, you know, a lot more plants than the neighboring Maasai. But they say, oh, it's all because of the fiber they eat. They eat all these tubers. Actually, they generally they don't like those tubers. Their favorite food is honey, and it is with any tribe, because we're all sugar addicts. But they don't eat it much, and they have to go up a tree and get stung to death to get it. You know, they don't have a garage there where they fill up their car and they can get 6 Mars bars every day, you know. So they don't have it very often. They gorge out on it. They love it. Second favorite food, always meat. And that's what they thrive on. And then the third is berries, nuts, whatever happens in season. And the least favorite are the tubers they eat. They don't actually even eat them. Generally, they chew them up and actually spit out the fiber. So when they're saying it's down to fiber, because fiber is another myth. It causes all the digestive issues and problems that it's said to cure. It takes a long time to hurt you, so people think it's beneficial. But when you come off it completely, digestion, elimination is perfect. There's no problem with that. If people want to look into that, see the fiber myth, I think it's called, by Konstantin Monastersky. But great book. And there's studies, if you look on PubMed, you can find when they took all the fiber out of people's diets and the constipation cleared up. And that kind of puzzles the world of gastroenterology. But if you look at the Hadza, so they've got a very complex microbiome, very diverse. And the Maasai next door, maybe not so much, but they don't study them. They live on blood, meat, milk, and they don't take in any plants really. Well, certain sections of their society do. Obviously, the world is changing now, and it's all getting quite confusing. But they're sort of 7 foot tall and bring down lions with their bare hands, and they're all ripped and muscly and whatever. And the Hadza, they don't have all this cancer and whatever. But when they get older, their teeth are falling out. They're getting a bit of arthritis. You know, I've been to Tanzania. I've seen the Maasai. My missus is from Tanzania. And honestly, you just go there and you see them smile. It's like dazzling. You know, they've got these incredible teeth, and the health is absolutely robust. And the Hadza not so much, but people are obsessed with them and their microbiome. They misinterpreted why the microbiome is so diverse. It's probably because they eat a load of earth with the plants and stuff. They don't wash their hands. They drink dirty water. Stuff like what we're actually meant to do. You know, all this ridiculous nonsense of sanitizing your hands now, and and ruining all the microbiome and all your immune system, if it exists as such. But that's why they've got a diverse microbiome, not because they eat plants. And like the carnivore Dr. Sean Baker says, what is a healthy microbiome? Nobody knows. It's a microbiome that a very healthy person has. And that varies widely. You know, some people go carnivore and their microbiome gets more diverse. Some it gets simplified, but all of them seem to reverse diseases. So we don't know. It's a very young science. And so all this thing about, are people adapted to it? I don't know. I mean, there may be a certain factor of that, but I think we've got to go many, many, many more millennia before we are properly adapted to plants. And I hope it doesn't come to that, because that's what they're trying to make us eat. And that's going to cause tremendous sickness all around the world.
There's like a big push on Netflix and Game Changers. I watched that, and then everyone was talking about it and saying, you know, this is healthier. And all the studies they put on, like I've looked into it further, and apparently it's not scientifically backed properly, but there's a big push on it. You sort of see it all over Netflix now. But just going.
It was just for a sec on Game Changers. It was basically a pea protein isolate advertisement, wasn't it? For what's his name, James Cameron, who made the Terminator films, and you know, he's got big stakes in the pea protein business. And you know, I know that a lot of those people featured on Game Changers, those so-called athletes who are vegan, they don't really build their skills and strength and whatever on veganism. They tend to have this craze of it when they get caught up with the emotional nonsense in these films, and believing that the vegan diet is compassionate and all that and good for the planet, which it's not. It ruins environments, and the crop deaths are horrific. So there is no compassion in veganism, unfortunately, because that's where they go into it with a good heart. I understand. But a lot of these athletes have had tremendous declines in performance since. And I know Tim Sheaf, who won the Ninja Warriors thing in the States, and he was the parkour champion and whatever. And he was like the vegan prince in England, and he had this vegan clothing company and whatever. And then he got very sick with it, and I helped him with the transitioning. And he was in Forks Over Knives, or was it one of the others, Cowspiracy, one of these other nonsense films. And he asked for his contribution to be taken out of Game Changers, because by that time it had made him really sick, and he realized that it was nonsense. And this was somebody who was like the vegan prince in England. And those films are very damaging. They get to people because of the emotional content of it, but it is absolute nonsense and totally unscientific. And I think it would be a good idea, again, if somebody Googles Game Changers debunked by Dr. Paul Saladino and another guy on there, and they go through to every point of the Game Changers movie, if anybody's watched it. And once you've watched that, I think anyone will see that it's nonsense, because, you know, one film, two films, vegan propaganda films, can make you want to go and try plant-based diets, but you need to see the other side of it, because it's proper nonsense.
Yeah, I think people just believe whatever you see on TV, don't they? So
yeah, and isn't that true right now?
Yeah, exactly. Just going back to, so you mentioned was it deuterium in the water, or what is that exactly? Because I've never heard of that at all.
Well, it's not so much that it's in the water, it is part of the water. It's a type of water. So water has water on the planet generally has around 155 parts per million deuterium, which means that there's sort of 155 parts of D2O rather than H2O in the water. Now, it sounds like not much of a difference, but when you get down to like 130, 120, if you drank water like that, you'd probably never get sick your whole life. And that occurs at certain parts of the world. And you know, in Antarctica, certain glacial regions where you get low deuterium, very low deuterium water, which could be something around 80 or 90 parts per million. And it's very expensive to make, but people do sell it. And if somebody sort of has something like pancreatic cancer or something, it would be advisable to do that. You know, a carnivore diet and some good glass bottled spring water is probably fine, because you don't drink so much when you're running on fats instead of carbs. But if you're drinking very, very low deuterium water that's been made, you can get it down to like 10 parts per million. but then you can kind of dilute it with other stuff. You don't need to drink 10 parts per million, you know, if you're reversing cancer. But Dr. Laszlo Boros, he's a friend of mine too, and he's also a drummer, and he was also born in 1962, and he's a Gemini. So we've got a lot in common, but he's the leading researcher into deuterium. He had a twin brother, also a doctor, who died of cancer in 2006. And he found out, Laszlo found he was also full of cancer, and he cured his by going down the deuterium depletion route. But he is probably the leading researcher on deuterium in the world. And if people want to look for his talks to get a really good idea about deuterium, it's quite a complex issue. But basically, if you can reduce the deuterium levels in your body, then that's a great thing. Now, the cells are, the mitochondria, really, their function is to create water. And if you overhydrate, like we're told, another lie, that you need to drink loads and loads of water when you're not thirsty. And Laszlo, actually, he does courses called Washing Away Your Health, because you're just filling yourself up with 155 parts per million deuterium water, basically, you know. So the cells can't hydrate properly, and you just piss it out pretty much anyway, what doesn't go in. But if you eat lots of saturated fat, you don't need to drink so much, and the saturated fat causes the cells to produce their own deuterium depleted water. This is how a camel hydrates itself. You see, you know, they have a hump on the back, and they go through the desert on a long journey, and the hump kind of deflates, and people think, oh, it's water in there or something. But no, it's saturated fat. That's how they hydrate. It's interesting with a camel, because you can often not tell the age of a camel, because, you know, so you get a dodgy camel salesman, like a second-hand car salesman or something, can sell you a 30-year-old camel and say it's 7 years old, and you've got not much of a way of telling, and then it keels over the next day. But that's the principle of how we hydrate ourselves with saturated fats, the very thing that we have been told is so dangerous and we have to avoid. So that's basically deuterium, and it's very high in the reproductive part of any plants. It's high in eggs, actually, because that's the reproductive plant of an animal. But you know, egg yolks, you throw the whites away, they're not very good for you. But exactly the opposite of what we've been told again. But the yolks are great. There's kind of high in deuterium. But if that's the only high deuterium food you take in, the benefits far outweigh the negatives. But yeah, I would say nuts, seeds, fruits, they're all pretty high in deuterium. All the processed foods are, obviously, because they're all made of grains. Yeah. I mean, the American diet now is probably, like, I think I heard something ridiculous, like 60% grains and seed oils, and they're the two most dangerous things. And of course, you know, to protect us from this this convid that's been going around the media, pretending not to be flu. The WHO put out an advisory thing about diet at the beginning of this, saying we should eat more whole grains and vegetable oils and avoid saturated animal fats. I mean, just in that, you can see the genocidal tendencies, because those are the most poisonous things in many ways, but also very high in deuterium. Probably the highest deuterium foods you could possibly get are seed oils and processed grains. So, you know, that it's just another little way to look at diet that explains so much of what goes on in nature, and why we're given these fruits and nuts and whatever in season, and we tend to get fat from them. You know, I mean, not as fat as obviously a 600-pound person who's eating nothing but pizza and Coca-Cola and whatever, but put on a little bit of blubber for the winter, which is how we were intended to do, but not carry on eating them all the way through the winter. And there is a design in nature, and I think if you take that ancestral approach, you can answer an awful lot of your questions, but that anybody would have about diet. But the interesting thing is now how the brightest people are figuring out the actual science of this. You know, things like Zofia in Hungary with the gut permeability tests, and Laszlo with the deuterium, and seeing how it blows up the mitochondria and where it's coming from. All of these things point away from plant-based diets, all of them.
Yeah, because I've noticed since I've started eating natural fats, I've got a lot more energy. So for what I was looking at as well, apparently it's a more efficient form of energy. It's more like my performance is better in the gym. My stamina is better, everything. Like it just a lot more efficient. And I was just thinking, going back to when I was having carbohydrates and I'd crash and I just feel shattered at times. I'd be up and down all the time. And not only that, on a emotional level as well, like my emotions were everywhere, and anxiety seems to be enhanced when I wasn't eating right. But now I've got more control of pretty much everything. And again, I'm still not on the full carnivore diet. I haven't tried it, but just off doing this, I've seen a huge benefit.
Running on fats is amazing. I always like the analogy that it's like a log on the fire. It burns steadily, and carbohydrates are just like throwing newspaper on. Flares up and it's gone, flares up and it's gone. And it gives you much, much better energy. I'll play these long gigs and at night and get to the end of them and I can do them again. And I don't need to go out for a pizza afterwards. And it's great. You can just kind of forget about eating, and the energy is still there because your body is already conditioned to burning fats and burns your own fats. Yeah, absolutely.
I think what else I was looking at was food combinations. I know you mentioned that because I think today there's so much selection and variety. You've got so many options of what you can eat, and surely mixing all them foods and combinations isn't good. And if you're going back to our ancestors, they didn't have all these options, and they did have to rely on their physical attributes a lot more than us today. So it kind of makes sense not to have so many food combinations, and certain foods don't mix well with others.
Well, what you've got as well is the completely unnatural food combinations, like carbs and fats. Now, if you think in nature, really, it only exists in nuts and breast milk. Really, if you look at anything else, anything that has carbs in it doesn't have fat in it. Fruit, honey, whatever. And anything that has fat in it doesn't have carbs in it. Animals. So the combination is very, very unnatural, and it ruins our perception of when we're full. And it also causes metabolic mayhem, and it's really the root of diabetes. Like a lot of the vegans say now, carbohydrates don't cause diabetes. Well, in a sense, they're right, because none of these hunter-gatherer tribes who ate carbohydrates got diabetes. But as soon as they brought the seed oils in and they're combining them, then they did start to get all sorts of issues. And so then the vegans blame it on the fats and the animal fats. No, everyone's missing the point here. Whatever combination you have, even if it's a natural combination of carbs and fats with naturally grown, like one of the greatest pleasures and probably the only thing I miss in the plant kingdom is potatoes and butter. That combination, you get a baked potato, you swamp it in butter, you mash it in, it's absolutely delicious and it's addictive. But how much can you eat if it's a dry baked potato? Not much. But I could eat like 4 baked potatoes in a row if they had half a pound of butter in each one. Because it's incredibly addictive. And then if you go even worse, when you get to the combinations of not just potatoes and butter, which is, bad enough metabolically, really, nothing particularly wrong with the butter if you can take dairy, but dairy is not ideal. But when you start to get into the combinations now that they have of the processed carbs and seed oils, it's devastating for the body. And they are all, if you think about it, the most addictive foods. Everything everybody's addicted to. Whether it's a bucket full of Haagen-Dazs, that's sugar and fats, carbs and fats. Whether it's chips, fries, it's carbs and fats. Pizza, carbs and fats. All the crap that you eat out of packets, Doritos, things like that, carbs and fats. Donuts, the personification of the worst food on the planet. It's seed oils with processed grains, just absolutely disgusting. And all of those addictive things, the things that people cannot stop eating because the hunger signals have gone, the leptin signaling has gone, which is the hormone that tells us when we're full, that's gone. So that's the problem. And it's that combination particularly of foods. People go all these sort of fiddly thing of don't combine with protein and this, and don't do, no, just eat real foods, and don't eat these combinations of carbs and fats. It's that simple, really. Whether it's savory combination or whether it's a sweet combination, it's always the same combination that makes us totally addicted and sick, you know, because it just, if you have like a plate, what have I eaten today? A load of lamb chops, and I ate them. I don't feel hungry anymore, and I won't. I could easily go 2 or 3 days before I really feel hungry. I've eaten that. I've eaten a shed load of fat, but if somebody brought me some Haagen-Dazs afterwards, I could eat the whole bucket. But I couldn't eat another lamb chop, because it's like the wrong signaling, you know. And it confuses our body. People say, oh, I've got my dessert stomach now. Oh, I'm so full, but I've got my dessert stomach. Well, there it is. There's the addiction.
Yeah, there's always room for dessert, isn't there? Like you can just keep eating it non-stop. If you eat one chocolate biscuit, then you'd end up eating the full pack. You can't just have one.
Yeah, like that ridiculous, I mean, that ad that used to sum it up, wasn't it, with Pringles, or cancer in a can, as I call it. And they go, once you pop, you can't stop. And yeah, you can't. I remember sitting in cinemas, I'd go and get some Pringles and some chocolate, you know, and sit there, and you say, I'll have a couple of those. No, I need more. No, now I need something sweet. And then you get that sweet savory cycle as well. Right, I need a big swig of that Coca-Cola. Oh, now I'm hungry for more Pringles. And it goes backwards and forwards, backwards and forwards. And the leptin signaling is absolutely destroyed. And it takes a while to get that leptin signaling back online. And you have to do it by eating tons of fats and tons of proteins and nothing else. And eventually the signaling comes back.
And so just thinking back to, say, our ancestors, where you mentioned we wouldn't eat for, you know, sometimes, well, you said you wouldn't get hungry for maybe a couple of days. Going back to our ancestors, there would have been times like that where they went without food for a full day. And I know a lot of people do fasting, and from what I've heard, there's a lot of benefits to it. The body can focus on repairing and many other things. I don't really know too much about it, but it's just my assumption. If we're going back to our ancestors, they never really had, they weren't eating constantly every half an hour, every couple of hours or whatever. They were stretching it out.
Yeah, well, the fasting is incredibly healing. I mean, when I was in my sort of vegan veggie phase, when I was trying to heal from the rheumatoid arthritis, I did a lot of fasting. I think the longest I did was an 11-day water fast. But I know people who've done way more. But I had to do them repeatedly because the foods were so inflammatory. So I had to fast to get rid of the inflammation in between all the time. And I was constantly doing 3 to 5 day fasts all the time. Now I don't really do them. I do them around new moon sometimes for a couple of days leading up to a liver flush, which is a whole other rabbit hole. But if you're on a really high fat diet, you need to fast less, although you fast more in a way because you only eat once or twice a day maximum. So you're fasting as far as most people are concerned. Some people go, oh, you've done a 24-hour fast. To me, that's between meals. That's nothing. I mean, to me, a fast really starts at one night, one day and one night without food, and preferably without water as well. You know, this dry fasting thing I've become quite fascinated with. Now, it's not essential for everybody and people need to be careful with it a little bit, but it's a lot less unsafe than people think. And it's said that 1 day of dry fasting is equivalent to 3 days of water fasting, as far as autophagy and apoptosis goes, and blowing up the cells that are bad and getting rid of all the bad cellular water. And if you've got very high deuterium levels, a dry fast is probably the best way to clear it, because you're not taking any water with any deuterium, you're not taking in any food whatsoever, and the body goes into repair mode completely. And it is very powerful. I've done it a few times. Never done a long one. They say the research, and there is some really solid research in coming out of Russia, well, it's been there for a long time, that an 11-day dry fast, and people think, oh, you die after 3 days without water. No, you don't. In fact, you're not even particularly thirsty. You're more thirsty on the first day than you are on the third day. If you're wandering around in the desert, already dehydrated, and you're under the hot sun and you're lost and you're stranded, yes, you'll probably last about 3 days. But if you're sitting at home chilling out, you are not going to die from not drinking water for 3 days. And people, yeah, you're absolutely right. People eat and drink way too much, too often, too much. You see this thing on a carnivore diet. It's not a diet. It's you're never hungry. You're always full. You don't have to go hungry. You don't have to say, oh, I mustn't eat anymore, but I'm still hungry. No, just eat until you're hungry and then wait till you're hungry again. Stop when you're full. It's very easy. But that is a longer gap in between meals that obviously helps with autophagy and apoptosis as well. Don't eat late at night. Don't eat within 4 or so hours of bedtime. That helps an awful lot with cellular regeneration. But the fasting thing, yeah, it is hugely helpful, particularly people early on in their healing journeys and people who are on diets that are not optimal. Fasting is very useful. On a carnivore diet, you don't really have to think about it. Do it if you want. Absolutely fantastic. Loads of people fast on a carnivore diet. I've seen lots of discussions. My group, 100% Carnivore and Beyond, on Facebook's got about 15,000 in now. I only started it up for 5 friends. I don't know how that happened. But there's tons of people and loads of discussions about fasting on there. And some people, oh, I never do it. Oh, I do it loads. It doesn't matter. Do what you want. Experiment with it. It certainly won't do any harm. But, the only problem with fasting really is electrolytes. So if you drink, if you look at Cole Robinson's YouTube channel, it's hilarious. The snake diet YouTube channel, the guy just, he never stops swearing. Everything is fuck, fuck, fuck. I mean, every other word. And he shouts. So he seems like a bit of a moron when you first see him, but no, he really knows his stuff. So if you drink his snake juice, it'll balance the electrolytes there, to get you through the fasting without any electrolyte imbalance. It's totally safe. Dry fasting slightly different. If you get a high heart rate, stop completely. If you want to look into that, there's August Dunning's channel on YouTube. And I don't know why it's escaped me what it's called now. I'll think of it in a minute. But he's also written a book, and he's great on it. Does regular 7-day dry fasts and takes you through exactly what to expect on each day. But that research coming out of Russia, the Phoenix Protocol, that's what it's called, the book and YouTube channel. But the research that's been done in Russia, Filanov and one other scientist, but they came to pretty much the same conclusions. And something pretty magical happens around the 9th to 10th day of dry fasting. And people are blowing up pretty much any cancer like that. I mean, if somebody told me I had pancreatic cancer, no question, 11-day dry fast. I'd go straight for it. If I couldn't get through that, then a cycle of, because there are some reasons why people might not get that far into a dry fast, but I'd be going for a 3-day water fast and then 1-day carnivore refeed, and just do that until it's a slower process slightly, but very effective without the sort of extremes of the dry fasting. But yeah, huge benefits to fasting, even if it's just going on a carnivore diet, because then you're going to be fasting 24 hours a day a lot of the time anyway. But yeah, you can do days and days, but it's not necessary. If you're eating the right things and drinking the right things and doing other things according to nature, we overcomplicate it so much. You eat when you're hungry and you drink when you're thirsty. And it's that simple. But it's not when you get that mix of carbs and fats, because it gives you the wrong signaling because you're hungry every 5 minutes. Yeah. So once you've got rid of that and you get your true hunger and thirst signals together, just go with that. And you can ignore every diet guru on the planet.
And it just sort of takes time to adapt and your body to change, and then you start noticing the difference. How long does it usually take for you to stop having them cravings all the time?
It varies with people. I mean, I find it interesting when I see people go on a carnivore diet. They start off and they say, oh God, I can't do without this. Oh, I'll miss that so much. Oh, what am I going to do without this? All sorts of different things. And then they go on it, and the first couple of weeks are hell. The cravings are awful. But then the benefits come in and they start to think, oh, hang on, and my belly's disappearing and I'm not so brain fogged and all these things happen. And then you start to get kind of fascinated with that. Get over the first couple of weeks and most of it's manageable. I won't say gone. 30 days in, you're pretty much fat adapted. Not if you're an athlete and expecting performance, that takes longer. But for a normal person, just to go around everyday life, you're generally adapted around 30 days, 6 weeks, something like that. But then sort of on the 90-day mark, when you say to people, well, look, I tell you what, just try it for 90 days. And then, even a vegan diet's not going to kill you in 90 days. So try it for 90 days. And then after that, have what you want, add in everything that you miss. So you're not going to have to do without them. And that's easier for people psychologically. Funny thing is, when they get to that 90 days, they go, do you know what? There's a couple of things I still crave, but nothing like what I did. And I'm not going to eat that. And I'm not going to eat that. And I'm not going to eat that. And they don't again.
Yeah.
And some people might reintroduce a few things and that's great. And they're okay with them. And some people introduce a few things and they're not, it makes them sick. And so they go, right, I've had enough of that. So the cravings, do they ever go away? I don't know. I mean, I was very strict for sort of 5 years. But now I'll have the odd chocolate binge because I can do, because I've healed and I know it's not ideal, but I won't do it all the time, and I'll just go with it. And then I'll go, well, fine. And I can leave it. But I've lost that really unhealthy relationship with food. That it's, you've got to eat it all the time. Like when I say I treat chocolate probably like a hunter-gatherer tribe treats honey, because they have it once in a while and they binge. And I'll do that. I don't want to have one chocolate. You want to have the whole pack, right? So you have the whole pack and then you don't have any for a month. Yeah. And because I don't buy, we haven't bought a vegetable in this house for 6 years. We haven't bought bread for 11, and so none of that stuff is around. I just eat meat and I'll drink the odd red wine or brandy. I avoid the grain alcohols. And I couldn't, when my liver was so bad, all the time I was vegetarian and vegan, I couldn't take alcohol, not at all. My liver was trashed. I had fatty liver, I had cysts on it. That's all reversed as well. So I can have some alcohol now. I know it's not that ideal, but on a carnivore diet, the saturated fats, particularly tallow, protects the liver enormously against alcohol. And I'm not recommending it. Alcohol pulls thiamine out the body and it does all sorts of other things. But if you're fully carnivore, high fat, and you drink, I think you'll be incredibly unlikely to get cirrhosis of the liver. Something else might get you, but not that, So all these misconceptions that we've got. So, it's the cravings. Yeah, they go. And then after a while, if you reintroduce something every now and again, if you want, then absolutely you can control it. But I don't have veg. I won't. The starchy things are far worse. If you had autoimmunity, you can probably eat a bar of chocolate, you'll be fine. But if you eat some broccoli, you'll hurt. And people go, oh, no. That's not to say chocolate's good for you. It's just that it doesn't disrupt the gut in the same way that the starchy stuff does, and the fiber, and that causes the real issues. Because simple sugars are kind of gone higher up in the digestive system, they've gone. But that cellulose that the sugar's trapped in, the carbohydrates are trapped in, takes it further down in the gut and activates certain bacteria like Klebsiella, which are associated with ankylosing spondylitis, back arthritis and stuff like that. So, it's interesting to look into the science of it. But to me, it's really simple. I studied diet for like 40 odd years, and it took me so long to see through all the nonsense. And now when you phrase it so simply, it's very hard for people to realize that you've actually looked into it. And when I say now that all I needed to do was look at a cave painting. There's one bloke, there's one spear, and there's one mammoth. And that's what we ate. There's no broccoli, there's no quinoa, there's no donuts, they're not there. That's what they celebrated. And it is really that simple, but we've overcomplicated everything. There's a phrase, I'll shut up after this, but there's a great phrase that somebody made up, I don't know, but it's humans are the only species intelligent enough to make their own food and stupid enough to eat it. And that kind of sums us up, really, doesn't it?
That's very true, though. All like you mentioned there, the vegetables, the broccoli, I used to think that grew in the ground, but it's all modified. I thought it was natural, but yeah, it's modified with all sorts of different things, and it's not a natural vegetable. It never existed, like you said.
No, and indigenous tribes, they don't eat that stuff. Even the ancestors of it, the brassica plants, they don't eat it. They might use it for medicinal issues, sometimes medicinal, preparations. But mostly they're sort of external things on wounds and infections. And I find that you don't really need so many plant medicines if you eat fewer plants. They're mostly these plant medicines are there to reverse the damage done by other plants in the diet. So just, I mean, it's another thing that carnivores notice when they go carnivore. They don't have any of these medications. They don't, these sort of plant meds or herbal things. They don't need them anymore. The cupboards get cleared out. The supplements go in the bin. You know, the things you spent hundreds of pounds on trying to get all these extra nutrients in, and they're all full of fillers that keep the gut leaky anyway. They're rubbish, you know. I mean, there are certain times when supplements are very useful, but that's another rabbit hole, and it has to, you have to know what you're doing and take the right supplements for short periods of time. But how we sort of go down to Holland and Barrett and buy all that crap and throw it down our necks, and it doesn't work. But yeah, the indigenous tribes did not eat those kind of things. They ate tubers because they taste quite nice, you know, but the plants, they don't, the leaves and stalks, they didn't eat that stuff. It's what I often say now is, if somebody doubts this and wonders what it's like in the wild, there's a excuse me, there's a series on the TV called Naked and Afraid. Have you ever seen any of it? Oh. It's really worth watching. It's just they take a couple, well, a man and a woman, they usually don't know each other, and they just have no clothes, and they put them out in the rainforest or in the African bush or whatever, and they say, right, here's a pot to boil your water in, and here's a knife, and here's a fire starter or whatever, sometimes not even that, and they say that's all you got, and they have to go and build their own shelter and whatever and find their own food. And you get the occasional vegan or vegetarian going in there going, oh, I'm just going to live on nature's bounty, you know, and I can eat all this, expecting to find a load of mango trees or whatever, and bananas, and it doesn't happen. Even in the really rich areas of rich vegetation like the rainforests, they find these fruits, and they're usually little shriveled things that are very sour. They're very small, sour. They're often full of worms and maggots and whatever. The monkeys get to them first generally, so they don't get much of them, or they're sort of covered in bat piss and they get very sick off that. But very often just the plants themselves they get sick off, and you can see them, they can't find enough to eat. and they're always the ones that get stretchered off, you know, they get some awful gastro issue and they're throwing up and shitting all over the place, and they get stretchered off, and the guys eating the meat, they're fine. I mean, it's not always the veggies and the vegans, you know, the other guys will say, oh, look, there's something that's edible, and they'll eat this fruit or eat 2 or 3 of them, and then they get sick, even if they're not veggies or vegans. But you can see that you cannot survive on plants in the wild. You can't do it. Vegans think that we have some sort of a recent ancestry where we did that. No, you know, there are certain monkeys that are adapted to it, and that's fine. That's what they eat. But we're not, and if you try and do that, even in those places where there are lots of plants around, but then you go further north, I mean, people, what you're going to eat in Scotland in the winter, you know, if you don't eat animals, you're going to starve. Yeah, exactly. You can't go out on a quinoa hunt or something. It's not going to happen, you know.
I watched one of your other podcasts, I think it was the start of the year, and you mentioned about, so you're talking about our ancestors, and there's no evidence of all these diseases that have now appeared, and you know the statistics, what the studies are showing now, and what the increase in like all these diseases like autism, Alzheimer's, dementia. And I seen a study, and it said from 1975, only 1 in 5,000 people were born with autism, and now it's moved up to 1 in 36. So it's like there has to be something going on in our environments, or whether it's in the food. And you know, I just want to really get an understanding more about our ancestors, and because the argument from other people is we live longer nowadays, we have this healthcare, and that's what they seem to think.
Well, we don't live longer. We just die slower. That's what happens. You know, I mean, in these hunter-gatherer tribes, they get sick for a couple of days and then they pass away in their sleep. You know, that's generally the end of their life. here we're on medications for ages and ages, and people say, oh, the medications keep us alive, but do they really? And if they do, is it in a very good state of health?
Oh.
And we get to have to take these medications simply because we've taken their advice about diet and lifestyle in the first place.
Yeah.
So the whole thing is it's a criminal enterprise. If you look into how the Rockefellers started the medical system early last century, and how they sort of co-opted it and got this sort of petroleum-based nonsense, you know, pharmaceutical company going, and then ousted all the true healers who get branded as quacks and run out of the country or killed. And that is how our present medical system started. So we don't live longer. We've been fooled into thinking by these ridiculous statistics. Interesting to see that Bill Gates was pictured with the book How to Lie with Statistics on his desk. And yeah, this is what happens. You look at statistics in one way. Quite a few of these indigenous tribes do have high infant mortality, so that brings down the average. But what we should be looking at is the people who are 70, 80, 90, 100 in these tribes, and see what state of health they're in, and compare them to the 70, 80, 90-year-olds or whatever in our hospitals and hospices and at home with carers and stuff like that. This is not a life, this is existing.
No, not
and this is what we've got. Yeah. And we are zoo animals, you know, we're in cages of our own making, obviously, but we are zoo animals. And you put animals in captivity and feed them the wrong diet, they start to get the same problems that we do. And it's not just that, you know, it's artificial light, EMFs, Wi-Fi, it's all that sort of thing, lack of vitamin D from the sun. But these mental issues that you're talking about, one of the most miraculous things that I see among the people who go on a carnivore diet is the wonderful way that their mental health increases or restores. You know, they've been on meds for years, or some of them, you know, they've just been suffering anyway without the meds or whatever. but huge differences in mood. In fact, it was autism that brought me to this whole thing in the first place, by looking into Natasha Campbell McBride and her books, like it's called what's it called, GAPS, Gut and Psychology Syndrome. And she reversed her kids' autism on a really high fat, low carb diet with lots of bone broths, that kind of thing. And people, many people, millions of people around the world have gone on to do the same. And there is a huge connection between the gut and mental health. And the amount of times I see people go onto a carnivore diet and go, my depression's gone. You know, on my website or on my YouTube channel, you can find an interview with Brett Lloyd that I did I did just a little podcast. I've got another podcast now, but that podcast was 100%, no, just called Carnivore and Beyond. And there's 10 of them on there, and the one with Brett Lloyd, and he's kind of well known in the carnivore world as well now. Particularly, I get to talk more about the autoimmunity side, and he gets to talk more about the depression side. But his interview was amazing, because it just decades he went with severe depression, and then his you know, he's in tears in the interview at certain times, just remembering when that lifted, you know, and how now he's totally free of it. And you heal the gut up, and a lot of these things go away. I mean, all of these things really, the whole autism spectrum. People get very angry when you talk about that, reversing autism, because they say, oh, well, no, it's like human 2.0, and they're all very intelligent and talented. And yeah, but you can get rid of the negative effects of it while retaining the genius that quite a lot of these people actually have. And it might be, it might be even that certain people with that sort of gene for genius also have that gene for autism. So who knows, that's maybe the downside of it. But it's no disrespect to anybody when they say, oh, that's disgraceful, you can't say you reverse autism. But yeah, you can reverse the negative sides of what doctors call autism, which really is a combination of autoimmunity and genius. So let's not get sort of all stuffy about the about the sort of thing of, oh, we need to reverse autism, you know, when everybody's on about autism awareness and acceptance. Well, fine, you know, but just put the mitochondria back into their healthy state, and these things really flatten out. But I mean, schizophrenia, all kinds of things I've seen reversed on this. It's all mitochondrial dysfunction and leaky gut. You know, the gut-brain axis, so powerful. Half of our brain's in the gut. So is it a wonder that mental problems clear up when you heal that gut? No, not to me. It's all the same. It's all part of health.
Yeah, I've seen that it's directly linked to the mind, and all the serotonin is produced there. So, you know, it makes sense what you're putting in and what you're eating that will affect your mental health. As well, so just going back to the medications, what we currently have available. So I remember I had gabapentin, I believe it was, and diazepam, and he just made me feel terrible, and it wasn't good for my mental health. Obviously they mute certain parts of pain signals and whatever, but it made me so much worse. I wasn't having any benefits to it. I was given cortisone injection, and that just made me even worse. And it's been worse since I had that. And now, from what I was told was, yeah, it has evidence of helping with healing and all this crap. It wasn't true. And now what I've studied, it apparently speeds up degeneration, cortisone. There's evidence of it doing that, and it's kind of like all this stuff. It's just to disguise and hide the problem, what's going on, and then if they were really making you better, you wouldn't still be taking them all your life, would you? You know what I mean?
No, absolutely. It's all designed to just cover up the symptoms, and sometimes it doesn't even do that, and it makes worse ones.
Yeah.
But people take it because they feel that they have no option, because the criminal Rockefeller business model that's called the healthcare system convinces us that these things are incurable. And anybody who says they are curable is a quack. And this is really dangerous, because it keeps people horrifically sick. And in my view, these people are the quacks, you know, because when you see the docs waking up to this, like Paul Saladino, like Sean Baker, Ken Berry, Paul Mabry, tons of them.
Yeah.
You know, I know a lot of these guys personally, and they're so genuine, and they're just so delighted. A lot of them end up giving up their medical careers because they realize it's just so much more effective. But there's some of these guys, whether they're ignorant or whether they're just held in place by a paycheck, you know, they carry on with this ridiculous information. And you know, I always liken it to taking your car to the garage to get fixed because the oil warning light's on, and the mechanic just smashing the oil warning light and then saying, right, that'll be 50 quid. You know, is anyone going to pay that? They're not going to do that. And that's what rheumatologists do. That's what, you know, all these people do on the pharmaceutical side of medicine. And I had another great analogy the other day when somebody said it's the same as when the building's on fire and you just smash the fire alarm to shut it up. I thought that was brilliant. Yeah. So, you know, covering up the symptoms, it's just nonsense way of treating people.
They don't really study nutrition in the curriculum, do they? So like nutrition isn't a big thing, even though it should be.
Oh, Kyle, that's unfair. They get a day of nutritional education in their 7 years of training for drug peddling. They get a day. So they, and then it's in the wrong nutrition.
Yeah.
So yeah, you know, it's amazing when you see it like that. And then people go, well, you're not a doctor. You need to go to your doctor for diet advice. Well, yeah, you know, why not go down the laundrette or something? You're going to get just as good advice, you know, probably better by law of averages. No, no training at all.
You know everything about drugs and injections, that seems to be it. It's kind of like just an extension of pharmaceuticals. You know, it's all and it's like a relationship between food industry, pharmaceuticals, and I mean, there is some good doctors, and a lot of them have come out about, like you mentioned then, about alternatives, but then it's like they're kind of like the sales reps for the pharmaceuticals. Any problem, here's a tablet for it. And they never look to the root cause. They just, a lot of the time, I'm not saying they're all like that, but a lot of the time, that's what they do. They just tick a box and prescribe you with these tablets, which don't end up having a benefit.
But, you know, are you suggesting that there is a link between the agriculture business, the food business, the pharmaceuticals? You're a tinfoil hat wearing conspiracy theorist, Carl.
Yeah.
That's terrible. But you're absolutely spot on. Yeah, of course there is. It's all the same players. It's all the same players. And when you see it, how, you know, people go, oh, no, nobody would do that. But there are. I mean, I'm really proud to be part of the Human Unleashed, which is Ben Hunt, Graham Norbury, Jeremy Ayres, and John Gusty, our kind of band manager, who is in the States, and me. There's 5 of us, and more of it. John does less in that, but more in the red pill side of things. But you know, we're starting this book. Well, we've written the Red Pill Revolution book, and we're almost through the Red Pill Food Revolution, which will be out in December. And honestly, I've got to blow our own trumpets here, but I think it's the best book ever written on how all this ties in and how we've been lied to over the centuries. The first book is kind of more general, how we've been lied to in every area about banking and everything, you know, everything that's gone on. But this one, we've gone pretty harder into it with the rise of the psychopath. And there is some real nefarious stuff up the top here. People know this. People know what's going on. You're telling me that these corporations don't know that seed oils and processed carbohydrates cause sickness? Of course they do. There's people down below who get educated into believing it. And the medical system does. It creates these automatons, these doctors who have good intentions, but they can't be bothered to do any research after their medical school. And they still carry on pushing this stuff because they really believe things are incurable. But it's weird to me. I was saying last night, I was playing a gig, and it was at one of these sort of freedom rallies, and, you know, objecting against a lot of the tyranny that's going on at the moment. And I was saying to a guy that I've lost my train of thought there. What was I saying to the guy? I don't know. But the psychopathic tendencies of these people, we get led to believe that everybody has good intentions, but the psychopaths at the top, people think that they're rare. They are rare in society, right? But if you look, there's books been written on it, that they're very common in positions of power. And they get into these pharmaceutical industries, they get into the medical system, they get into government and whatever. And there's a lot of them in there. And when you see how it's dovetailed, it's very interesting to see, and how we're looking at it in the book, how it's dovetailed with the rise of agriculture. Because in a hunter-gatherer society, a psychopath is not, it's not a place for a psychopath. There isn't that sort of hierarchical system where they can where they can thrive and control other people. But as soon as you start to pretend that land is something you can own rather than the land owns you, which is how it should be, that you own the land, you have this bit of land and we're growing food on this land. It's not really food, it's, as we call it in the book, feed. We make a distinction between food and feed. And the psychopaths all down the ages and the rulers have fooled people into thinking that this is the right food that they should be eating, because then they can control them. Then they can pay armies to defend this little bit of agriculture that they've got. And then that's grown and that's grown. And that has, it's interesting to see how plant-based diets have actually dovetailed with the rise of the psychopath. And it's what I mean in how we're going into it in this book, and all the incredible pseudoscience that's happened around diet. And I'm just so proud to be part of this team, because I think we've come at it from all different walks of life, from medicine, from banking, from the arts, from all kinds, you know, regenerative farming, and these are all our specialities. And we've met in the middle, really, with being able to create these books. And it's been a fascinating journey of really looking at what has happened with the human diet, and how the science has been co-opted. And it's not science, it's scientism, it's absolute scientism. Yeah. And it's convinced us that that our ancestral diet that we're adapted to is the worst diet that we can possibly eat. And if somebody's done that to its own species, where has this come from? You know, I say that if you follow it back towards the billions of dollars. Yeah. And that's what's happening. There's such a high margin in processed grains and seed oils that this is where it's come from. And I thought it was just people being a bit silly and forgetting, but no, it's nefarious, it's evil, and it's coming about now. And you can see it when they're trying to ban meat now, and they're trying to say that farting cows cause climate change and stuff like that. It's insane. You know, if anybody thinks that, just think for a minute of the massive mega herds that roamed around, and before, you know, that outnumbered the cattle we have on the planet now. Were they holding in their farts? Were they not burping because it was polite to their neighbor? Come on. You know, the same thing was going on there. It has nothing to do with it. And so you follow all the billions back and you can see it. And it is really nefarious. And this is what we go into in the second book that'll be out in December. If anybody's interested, it's theredpillrevolution.com. Go check it out. And our first book is available. But I think it's a really important time, without, as I said, going into any areas that's going to get your channel pulled. But it's time to realize what's happened and how we have been lied to all these years about every single level of everything. And what gets me now is that, you know, as I was mentioning, I was playing this gig last night among this sort of group of what you would call they call awakened people rather than the woke people, which is the other side. But a lot of them are still vegan, and they haven't twigged this, that it's a control system. And then it has been a control system for centuries, if not millennia. They've always known. Look at the gladiators. You know, the ruling class, they all lived on meat and whatever. They fed the gladiators porridge. And so the game changers go, oh, look, it's a healthy diet. No, the gladiators were expendable fat slaves. And the fatter they were, the more sword blows they could take. And so it wasn't in the interests of the rulers to have them really healthy. They wouldn't waste all the good food on somebody who was going to get cut to pieces in the arena. So if you look at all these little individual bits of history, and there's many, many more. Somebody just put a post up, a brilliant post on my group. I noticed it about 5 minutes before I came on this podcast. I haven't had a chance to read it fully, but all the instances in history where we've been fed these crappy diets by the rulers who all live on meat and fat, and then they pan down this crap. And it's happening again with these toxic Beyond Burgers and whatever that they're making, these horrible soy and corn and God knows what based things that are supposed to look like meat, you know. Yeah. I mean, I don't make broccoli out of steak. What are they doing making meat out of plants? I mean, what's the point? Surely it shows they should be eating it. It's insane, isn't it? Yeah. But anyway, sorry, it was a long ramble. But I mean, I've got this so uppermost in my mind now of the actual evil that's brought around about this misconception about diet, you know. And they've got people doing it for their own good, eat plant-based diets. You look down in history at the real nasty people and the nasty regimes, they all started off with, it's for your own good, it's for others, it's for the health of the planet, it's for the, is it bollocks? Look into the destruction, look into the crop deaths, look into veganism and how it destroys the environment, you know. And if you believe in the climate crisis, which I won't go into here, but if you do believe in that, you know, and that CO2 is something dangerous and not just plant food, then look at regenerative animal agriculture, which is the only way to sequester carbon properly and the only type of agriculture that is carbon negative. So with whichever lens you look at it through, it retains the environment, it heals the human body. Remember, guys, remember, wake up to your facultative carnivory ancestry. This is who we are. We are not gorillas. Like I always say to vegans, if you want to eat like a gorilla, eat 50 pounds of dry vegetation a day, plus your own poo to get a bit of B12. That's your diet if you want to eat like a gorilla. You see how well you do on that, mate.
Just going back to before, you spoke about cellular regeneration. So fasting. I've been studying stem cells, and so the human body's ability to heal. So it sort of makes sense when so your stem cells, obviously non-specialized cells, will get sent to an injured area as a substitute to repair and then differentiate into that body part. So going back to, you said you had arthritis. It talks about in the book I'm reading that it's essential for your stem cells to have the right nutrients in order to repair and self-heal them structures. If you're feeding that a load of crap all the time, then they're not going to have the ability. And this isn't just from physical or sports injuries, it's everything. So I mean, your skin, your mind, your whole body, like it really goes down to that. So I think it is really interesting how that sort of ties in with your nutrition, I think.
Absolutely. Also, because I mean, that's the farce of cancer, isn't it? Because cancer treatments and chemo, because as I said to my mum's oncologist, when there's a video on my YouTube channel of my mum's breast cancer reversing on a carnivore diet plus a £5 bottle of iodine. And, you know, he was mocking me at the start when it was sort of diagnosed, and it was already quite advanced by the time she told me. And she was in her 90s at the time. And you know, eventually there was that lovely point where he turned around and said, how on earth did you do that when it reversed? And I said, is this the only natural cancer reversal you've ever seen? And he went, yeah. And I said, well, you're supposed to be an oncologist, you know, and you're not seeing them. And I'm a drummer and I'm seeing them. It's not rocket science, is it? But I said to him, look, earlier on, you know, before he actually saw it work, but I said, well, you're targeting the cancer cells and the healthy cells with your 3 options that you have. That's all you have is cut, burn and poison, right? In the cancer treatment thing, in the oncology departments. And then you've also got loads of chocolate machines and crisps and whatever in the corridors there. And I said to him, have you ever thought about that? And he went, no. Are you serious? You haven't thought about those machines? But anyway, I digress. But I said to him, look, surely those are the only 2 types of cells that you shouldn't be bothering with. The ones you should be bothering with is strengthening up the stem cells, because those are the ones that are coming along to create new healthy cells. But you're targeting the cancer cells, blowing them up, if you're lucky, without blowing up too many of the healthy cells. And he said, have you got a medical background? I went, no, I just got a brain. It's kind of obvious, isn't it? Because he couldn't deny it. He said, yeah, sure, that's what happens. And interestingly, you know, the more you subtract, like I've got an autoimmunity course out there called the subtraction method, because, you know, everybody wants to know what I had to leave a biohacking group the other day because somebody I just get sick of it. There's loads of them. People put up these posts, I've got such and such, what can I do? And people come up with these thousands of supplements and treatments. No, take away what's causing it. That old saying that, you know, if you're sitting on a drawing pin, don't take an aspirin to get rid of the pain. Get off the fucking drawing pin. You know, don't sit on it anymore. And it's the same thing. And it's biohacking groups. It's just too complicated. So taking away things is what's happening. I always end up popping up and go, just eat a high-fat carnivore diet and don't bother. And some people might see the nuggets, but most of them go, oh no, look at this person. They've listed 75 supplements. They must know more than this lunatic who said, oh, just go on a carnivore diet. But no, it's about subtraction. I know all those supplements that bastard's written in the comment above, and they're all rubbish and they'll make their gut leaky, you know? They're all unnecessary, except for maybe one of them for a month, sometime in their life, and it probably isn't now. But anyway, Another interesting thing about stem cells is that if you look at the Russian research and stuff on dry fasting, there's a point where they massively increase. I think it's around the 5th day, the 5th to the 7th day of dry fasting. If you want to really get a stem cell therapy, you know, because some of these are very promising. You know, you go down to Mexico and you pay 5,000 quid to get this stem cell therapy. Well, that's somebody else's stem cells for a start, you know, and sometimes they take it from your own bone marrow, whatever. But if you actually dry fast, it's free, and you'll even save on your food and water bill during that time. And by the 5th to the 7th day, you've probably got far more of your own appropriate stem cells coursing around and increasing than you would have done if you'd have gone down and paid 5,000 quid in Mexico or something. So again, it's about subtraction, you know, whichever way you look at it, it's about subtraction.
Yeah, because they get it from the umbilical cord in certain countries, and there's a higher count of stem cells because that's effectively what gives us life. But at the same time, there's other factors that come into place, and rejection. You know, obviously your own stem cells are meant to be better for you, they're designed for you. So, and they're already in your body. Like, our body has this ability to, you imagine, like, if your car broke down and then it fixed itself, like that's how extraordinary the human body is. It can heal, and like nothing else we create can do that.
Exactly. And you just got to get out of the way and let it do it. But people don't realize the things that make it ill. So if you get sick now, you say, right, go to the doctor, take this medication, then eat low fat, and then go to the gym and work out or go running, you know, and none of it, eat more fruit and veg out of season. None of this is going to do any good. None of it's going to do any good. If you're sick, eat exactly what they tell you causes cancer and heart disease, which is, you know, saturated animal fats and red meat. Stick to that. Get a load of sun exposure. Oh, no, don't do that. Put your sunscreen on. No, get your sun exposure. Don't burn to a crisp, but, you know, go out for your tolerance and go and do it. Get light in your eyes in the morning so that it sets up the whole cortisol melatonin cycle. Get the natural light in your eyes in the morning. Don't let your phone be the first thing you look at when you wake up. Get your feet on the ground. Get rid of artificial light at night. Wear some blue blockers. Get iris tech on your devices. You know, unplug them when you're using them. Try and use Ethernet cable rather than Wi-Fi, or at least turn it off at night. All of these simple things, and people go, "Oh, that's too obvious. What I want is a powerful drug or some herb from the Himalayas that's going to suddenly sort me out that costs 7,000 quid for a pot that some snake oil salesman is selling." You know, it's not. It's about, I wish there were more things I could sell as somebody who consults with people, as a carnivore sort of consultant. And I wouldn't call myself carnivore consultant, but a general sort of ancestral disconnect consultant, if you like. I wish there were more things I could sell. I wish there was. I wish, you know, like when you go to a naturopath and you spend 90 quid on a consultation, you come out with 400 quid's worth of stuff. And none of it does any good, really. I mean, at least it doesn't do you any harm like the pharmaceutical stuff does. But it's generally, not always, but pretty useless when you compare it with subtracting stuff. And so I wish there was. Like, people say you're some sort of a quack or a shill and you're trying to make money off it. Well, I'm doing really badly, you know, for ideas, if that's the truth, because there's nothing you can sell. What can you sell as a carnivore? You could sell you could sell some tallow candles or something, or you could sell some people sell these desiccated organ supplements, because organ supplements are basically your vitamin organs themselves are your vitamin pills. But some people, we've not eaten them much, so we're not conditioned to really like them. You don't even need much, you know, like half a pound of liver a week will do you for your supplementation. But some people can't even stand that, so people are doing these freeze-dried kidneys and thymus and liver and whatever, and companies have approached me to sell them, and they're all right, but I just can't. I'd rather see somebody get back to the fact that their tastes, their ancestral tastes, have come back and they can eat some liver, you know. Yeah, because there's cofactors in there that we probably don't know, and when they say none of the nutrients are destroyed by freeze drying, well, Yes, they are. They must be, right? They must be. I talked to Chava Top, Sophia's husband at Paleo Medicina, about this, and yeah, they are. Okay, they're fine. They you know, they're a lot better than eating crunchy nut cornflakes for breakfast and then having a load of vitamin C pills or something like that. You know, it's better, but there isn't anything you can really sell. It's health really is that simple.
Yeah.
It's about looking at all of the factors, the social interaction, the, you know, how you play with your kids, how you relate to your family, how you get outside, how you don't see if you can get yourself, if not in a physical situation, but in an emotional situation where you're not so worried about things like mortgages, which are just imaginary money anyway, and imaginary debt. If you look at our Red Pill Revolution book, you can see how that came about and how debt doesn't even exist. You know, it's another thing we've been lied to about. So, and this is all the things about modern life that cause stress. That, you know, a hunter-gatherer tribe, they have a hut, the bank's not going to repossess it, right? They don't have to worry about it. They just have to go out and get food, and then they can chill out. They can do what they want, and the lifestyle is totally different. So everything, all of these things causes stress, which causes mitochondrial disruption, which leads to disease. And it's just as simple as that. Health is as simple as that.
Yeah, so where you mentioned there about just getting out of the body's way and allowing it to heal. What I was reading was there's so much in the environment now that is affecting our stem cells, and it's suppressing their ability to heal and recover, and that's why there's a lot more chronic diseases and a lot more problems. And it was sort of like it was talking about, you know, external factors like radiation and whatever and everything. So it is just about limiting your time and with things like you said. But another thing that I came across, so where you were talking about vegetables and how everything's man-made, there was a study done on the fertilizer and the pesticides, what they use for mass production and obviously making them grow quicker. But apparently it kills off these 9 essential amino acids that are in the crops or in the bacteria. And this is like a toxic thing that's being passed into the environment. And, you know, it's in the rain, it's in the air. Apparently it's 75% toxic with this. And we've basically poisoned ourselves. And this is having an impact on everything. So it rains down on the crops, and you know the animals eat it, and then we eat it, and it's sort of pretty much everywhere. And them amino acids we don't produce naturally, and they're like the building blocks for health in the human body, a healthy human being and any sort of mammal. And they obviously create the proteins and the structures what we need. So this has as a result has an impact on our immune system, our health, our physical attributes, everything. And it was talking about our organic farming. I think it's gone. The good news is that it's been proven now. So like it was proven in America by professor of biology, Phil Gilder, his name is. And basically what he was saying was people need to go local more and shop organically. It's currently at 5% organic food. And if it goes to 16% or something like that, it'll cause the mass production and the chemical industry to collapse financially. So I think that's another interesting thing. Well, it's just another sort of factor that is impacting our health.
Yeah, well, we need to stop feeding these companies. You know, we need to stop buying these products. But if you see the thing that is the biggest threat to them, it's beef farming. It's proper beef farming and feeding people with the most nutritious food. Because number one, it makes them healthy, so their pharmaceutical industry collapses. Number two, it regenerates all the environment, so they can stop pretending about the climate change thing and that it's bad, and so they lose that hold over us. And then, you know, they're pushing all the organic, they're pretending to push the organic farming, because that's a little bit of a controlled opposition, really, because there's pretty much as many toxins in organic broccoli as there is in regular broccoli, if you like, because these things have naturally occurring plant toxins, and we just focus on the ones that are sprayed on. So the wrong questions are going on there. They need to start regenerative farming rather than having any of these crops whatsoever, organic or otherwise, because they're still just stripping the soil of nutrients with this monocropping. And, you know, well, you know, the pesticides and stuff that are sprayed on, it's funny because vegans, they always say, if they do admit that there are billions and billions of animals that die for their diets, then they go, oh, well, it's just accidental. You know, we don't mean to kill them. I say, well, what is it about the word pesticide that you're misunderstanding? You know, anything with "icide" on the end is for killing. And that's what it says on the tin. And that's what it does. And it poisons us, and it poisons the animals in horrible agony, you know, and then the ones that escape that get chewed up by the combine harvesters. And so the real picture of what's going on out there is nothing like we're being told. And we get told about this, oh, let's all eat organic and all that. I don't pay any attention whatsoever to organic or non-organic. Well, it means nothing to me anyway, because I don't eat any plants, so I don't go into the vegetable section, so I don't care. But even organic meat means nothing to me, because, you know, you get an organic chicken. What does that mean? It means that it's been thrown some non-GMO corn that chickens are not designed to eat in the first place, so the meat's inflammatory. And it's high deuterium fat on those pigs and chickens that have eaten the stuff they're not supposed to eat, and high omega-6s in the fats. That's why I don't eat chicken or pork, or very, very rarely. I'd love to eat pork crackling every day. It's the nicest thing in the world, but it's not good meat. It's not good fat. And so, you know, organic pork, well, what's happened to it? It's been fed a load of crap it's not supposed to eat, which hadn't been sprayed with pesticides. Whoopee, you know. The organic thing is a bit of a con, and it allows them to double the price on things, and you get sort of free range eggs or something. So great, a chicken's been allowed out for 5 minutes to run around and eat a load of corn that it's not supposed to eat, because it would rather be eating bugs and worms and mice and that sort of thing. Every level of what we've been told about diet is basically a con. I can't go along with the organic thing, because, well, only in that, as you say, if you didn't use the pesticides, it would bring down these these chemical industries. But that's it, really. I don't think it's any more healthy, particularly, as such, and it still wrecks the land. It has all the same problems. And I know it's sort of hard for people to take. So, oh, look, this guy on here, and he's saying don't bother with organic. Well, fine, you know, bother with organic if you like. It's a step in the right direction, but it's a very small step. It's like one step of 100-rung ladder, and you can jump up to about the 75th step by not eating any plants at all, organic or not.
You don't bother eating organic. It's just all whatever, so it doesn't really have an impact, because it's just, you obviously hear things of different people and information. It's like, you know, certain animals that aren't organic are injected with like growth hormones and all sorts of different things, and them cells, them whatever is in them becomes them, and then that we eat that and it becomes us, and it's in our body. But
well, look, there is that thing, and they're always arguing about it. But you see, two things really. Three things. What I really agree with farmers, with vegans about, is the horrendous practices in farming. Right, pig and chicken farming, absolutely disgraceful. They're fed crap. They're given drugs. All sorts of things happen. When you get to cattle farming, it really isn't as bad as they say it is. The hormones and antibiotics are not given to them in the doses they say they are, and animals that are grass-fed and pastured are not given this at all, unless it's kind of a life-saving situation. Plus, that even if they are given some of it, these animals have livers, and they filter out these poisons, which plants don't have. So whatever you spray a plant with, it's pretty much left with it. But what gets put into an animal isn't. So people go, oh, well, you can't eat meat because it's all full of hormones. So you go, look, right, okay, it's our ancestral diet. Plants aren't. So what do you want to do? You want to go and eat a plant that's full of toxins and sprayed with chemicals because someone's told you that they've injected this cow with hormones? It doesn't really add up. I have seen people heal marvelously on perfectly normal, like in the States. You know, some people have healed up just by eating McDonald's burger patties, right? If that's all they can afford or be asked to eat or to get their heads around cooking. Now, I never recommend for people to go and eat McDonald's burger patties, right? I don't like the company. I don't like anything about them. But if you've got to eat at McDonald's, that is the thing to eat, you know, because everything else is poison, but they blame the meat. So they go, oh, let's all get these plant-based McDonald's or whatever. Why? The meat was the only good thing in that meal anyway, with all the Coke and the fries and the bun and the seed oils and all that crap. So, you know, it's the best thing in the McDonald's thing, which is, you know, basically like saying, well, that cat turd is the least smelly cat turd. You know, it's not a great indictment of it. But you know, I can't get into this real thing about don't eat meat because it's got hormones. What else are you going to eat? This planet is not ideal. If you can afford to go to a grass-fed plate, which will end up organic anyway, even though they haven't often got the actual organic stamp. But if these cows and sheep that they grow on, they rear on their farm, are moved, you know, from pasture to pasture, natural pasture to natural pasture, but they haven't had the organic stamp, and you can see that they are, and they're grass fed, and they're not fed crap in the winter, and that is the best meat you could possibly get. So, and they're not injected with anything unless they've got some serious issue, which they seldom get if they eat the proper diet. So all of it comes down to sort of agriculture again, because they're feeding the pigs, chickens, and some of the cattle on the wrong diet. The diet that makes them sick, that makes them need hormones and antibiotics or whatever they give them, and it makes the humans sick as well. But then, you know, I would also say that, because then the vegans will come back with, well, most of the grain and the corn production and whatever goes to feed animals. But actually, it's once they've taken the oils out of all these crops and done whatever that we need for the humans, then the husks are given to the animals. So it wouldn't exist if it wasn't for us. If we didn't eat those grains and corns and whatever, all that shit, then the animals would not be forced into the CAFOs, into the factory farms, to have to be fed that crap. So it's basically the vegan diet. I mean, I love blaming vegans because they just get militant about it, but I include anybody who's plant-based. And for that, I include omnivores who eat toast and steak or whatever. You know, all these people who eat that stuff that is grown in fields. If we didn't eat any of it, none of it, there would be no factory farming. All the soil would be regenerated. There would be no need for any pesticides whatsoever. So you see, to me, this whole business of oh, is it organic or is it not? Again, it's like, which is the smelliest cat turd? To me, it's so far down the chain of what's really important, of what we should be thinking about human diet. This is what I mean. That's why we've done this book, you know, because the levels of bullshit, absolute and utter bullshit, are so deep. It's this massive onion of deception. You peel back one layer and you think, there, oh, there's another, oh, there's another one, you know, and the more and more you go down. But the root of it is grass-fed ruminant animals. Look at a cave painting. That's what we ate. It's as simple as that. And it sorts everything out. It sorts human health out. It sorts the health of the animals you're eating out, because they don't have hormones or antibiotics. They don't have anything like that. It sorts out, you know, the whole climate agenda would collapse if that was, you know, all of these things add up to showing how we have been totally deceived by all the people who feed us with this bullshit, who stand to make trillions from whatever it is that they're trying to persuade us to do. And people like me get called shills for the meat industry. you know, and you're doing this and that, you're being paid by big meat to do these you're killing people with your carnivore diet lies. And I go, come around, show me where my Lamborghini is, you know, where is it? I don't have it. If somebody wants to pay me, if the meat industry wants to pay me for talking like this, I'll happily take it because I know it's the truth. But if, you know, if I don't have that much money now, but if some vegan company came along and tried to pay me £1 million a year to talk about their stuff, I would not do it. But there's many who would, you know. I'd think, yeah, I'd love the money, but I'm not going to push that crap because I've been that sick from it. I've seen how sick it makes other people. So just follow the money and find the bullshit. And because organic stuff, I mean, where is the sense in this? Organic doesn't need any pesticides and it's grown naturally. How come it's 3 times the price in the shops?
Yeah, exactly. Doesn't make sense.
You know? There's a problem there. So you look at that and you think, well, how come that's any better? How come it's not? It's still crap that we've made in the last 200 years that we never ate in our ancestry, and we're arguing about whether broccoli should be organic or not.
Yeah.
Throw the fucking lot in the bin. Don't eat the broccoli.
It's just the sales technique, isn't it? But you've experienced it firsthand. So I think that's what people will appreciate more. It's not just off research you've done and you've experienced it. It's trial and error. You've done what's worked for you and you've proven it basically.
Well, at this stage, people usually come back with, where are the studies? Where are the studies? All the studies show fiber is essential. All the studies show that meat causes cancer. Well, you look at who these people are sponsored by, who these people are financed by, who are doing these studies. It's the big food groups. It's the big pharma groups. They're getting people to do it. If somebody would go to Zoe Harkham's site, you know, and look at the research she's got on how all of diet science is pretty much crap. You know, she's been through all of the studies and shows how they don't even show what they're supposed to show. It doesn't even show that. You know, all these studies on cholesterol, all this nonsense that was started up by Ansel Keys, you know, trying to show that saturated fat caused the heart disease epidemic in America, and he was paid off by all the big sugar companies. So there's been so much corruption in studies, and where you see the farcical nature of where some of it's come from. I mean, this is one story that probably people have heard me tell, but I think it's important to realize that, you know, for vegetarians and vegans, where this comes from, where some of these ideas come from. In the 1860s, there was a young girl called Ellen G. White, and she was at the start of the Seventh-day Adventist Church, you know, and her idea, she had these visions, so she said, that we should all eat a Garden of Eden diet and we should not eat any meat, because eating meat enrages sexual desires, and that's the root of all evil. You know, nobody must have enough hormonal health to have an actually good libido. No, you got to eat a load of plants to trash your hormones, so you have absolutely no sexual desire and probably no ability to perform anyway, like many vegans. And that's what you should do, because that's godly. Now, she started producing these books and pamphlets, and she hired well, the family, I believe, adopted a young boy who helped her with all of this and got all the brainwashing in. And he grew up and he ended up to having loads of cereal companies around the Midwest. And his name is Harvey J. Kellogg. And he was an absolute lunatic. And he was into sort of circumcision for males and females. He was just, you know, anything to get rid of sexual desire. He never consummated his own marriage, and he used to adopt children and stuff, probably fiddled with them all as well. The man was really weird. And he created this. And then I would like people to keep that in mind. Basically, you know, that when they're going down the cereal aisle and picking out their sunshine breakfast, that's Harvey J. Kellogg's anti-masturbation cornflakes. That's what they're designed for, ladies and gentlemen. They're designed to stop you wanking. And that is true. That's what they're for. Originally, this awful stuff that humans are not adapted to, and now we're told that it's this marvelous fortified breakfast. And then the sinister thing is really that the Seventh-day Adventist Church is now one of the biggest educators in America, and they own all these schools, and they still push this plant-based thing. And they come up with all kinds of falsified studies and data. And the recent World Health Organization findings that meat causes cancer, it was nonsense, complete nonsense. But the board, the committee that decided this and put out these findings was largely made up of people from the Seventh-day Adventist Church. And the people who weren't that, like what's his name? David Klurfeld, Professor David Klurfeld, who was on that committee, said it was all bollocks. And anybody who believed that was just the vegetarian, vegan people. And the other people on the committee knew that it was nonsense. It was all fraudulent. And they put out this thing. So now they put into the minds of even people who eat meat, they go, oh, it's a bit naughty, I'm eating some meat. So anybody who's vegetarian now, through that, and believes all of this kind of thing, I'd like you to realize that this came from the visions of one lunatic girl in the 1860s. And that's why you now have the WHO guidelines. And in the light of that, does this look a little bit more ridiculous?
Yeah, I'm always skeptical of the information now, and I'd rather believe someone who's done it and experienced it and lived it. And like you said, everything happens for a reason. So then you can now come out and share what you've learned and your knowledge, and anyone who's gone through that situation that you went through previously, you know, you've got the knowledge and the information to support them and give them the right guidance.
But I want to say to everybody out there, I mean, I've been wrong so many times, right? I think it's diminishing returns now as far as diet goes, but I still learn stuff every single day. You know, I study diet more every day, just wandering around listening to amazing scientists and docs talking about it, and anthropologists and God knows what. My phone, nobody can ever get in touch with me on my phone because it's always on airplane mode. I've got a podcast on or something while I'm wandering around shopping, driving to a gig, doing school lifts, whatever it is I'm doing. I'm listening to a podcast, and I can hear the vegans now going, oh, look, he listens to podcasts and not scientific studies. No, guys, these are the people who wrote the studies. These are the people who dissected the studies. These are the people, you know, and I like to hear their personality as well and what they've been through. Like you say, I like to see the science of it, and I also like to see the anecdotal evidence. But so I study this all the time, and I'm still learning. Every day I'll learn something, some little tweak of it, you know, these things, little things that you find out. Yeah. Just tiny little things that suddenly bring something else into complete perspective, you know. Yeah. And a lot of it might come through somebody like Paul Saladino, who has all the science, who I think I'd say has all the science, but he has an open mind to being wrong, and he dissects it and criticizes it, interprets it rather, in a way that the vegan docs just aren't. You know, the vegan docs are showing real misinformation, and they're even quoting studies that show the opposite to what they're saying, simply because they think that nobody else will research. Like, look to Dr. Greger, you know, the poor emaciated liver spotted lunatic who runs nutritionfacts.org, or Nutrition Fallacies, as my friend Bart Kay. That's another brilliant channel, Bart Kay on YouTube. Check him out. He really, really dissects the science and rips these people to bits. It's hilarious. But Dr. Greger, you know, and he says, you don't need to read the studies because I read them for you. No, look at them if you want to. Don't take this lunatic's advice for it. He's not a doctor. He's an absolute idiot, and he's emaciated. He's 10 years younger than me. He's got liver spots. His skin is like parchment. He's got no muscular bulk at all. And you know, the man's a wreck, as are most of the vegan docs. So I'm not being unkind to them here. I'm just saying, if you're a vegan, you're looking at that, look at vegan docs, then look at carnivore docs. You tell me who looks better. You tell me who's more eloquent, who's got humor. You know, I don't even see any humor in these vegan docs. You know, they've even lost that. No one takes the piss. No one mucks about. You know, this is not serious. This is all still fun. You know, you should be able to see the absurd in all of this and have fun with whatever you're doing. And the vegan docs don't seem to. They don't have any of this this humor and this way of looking at it. So, you know, when somebody starts quoting scientific studies at you, go look at people who've looked at it with no agenda. like Paul Saladino, like Zoe Harcum, you know, there's quite a few out there who are really, really putting a good angle on the studies. Bart Kay, follow his channel. He's a good friend. I've been on his channel a few times, and he's been on mine. And he's really funny. He's really irreverent. But this is a guy who's had peer-reviewed studies done. He knows the corruption in a peer-reviewed process. He knows about diet science and how people are twisting it round and twisting it round. And he's merciless. He's really merciless and really funny, you know, as he rips these people to bits. And yeah, just look at what is so corrupt about it all out there. And then, you know, look at some solutions of it. Come and join our Human Unleashed at humanunleashed.com. Look at redpillrevolution.com. Come and check out our guys. I also learned so much from the guys. These guys three other guys who I'm in the Human Unleashed with, because come from different angles, and Graham Norbury with all the science of it, and Jeremy with his incredible Jeremy Ayres with his incredible 30 years of healing people, you know, with proper medicine. And we're not talking pharmaceuticals or herbs and stuff, but, you know, medicine, of actually lifestyle interventions. And you know, these people, I love them, and this community of people who are really searching for this kind of truth are so much more open. We just want to be wrong. When we're wrong, we're excited. Vegans, when they're wrong, they don't even know they're wrong about everything, so they just get aggressive. You know, you just get death threats. You get, you know, as soon as they come on and make a comment, they're in caps or caps lock already, screaming about you're a murderer and all that. And you know, it's kind of funny sometimes, but it's very sad, because it makes them very sick down the line after their honeymoon period. And if we could just get rid of that, and then you wouldn't allow people like Bill Gates to come in with these ridiculous mandates for getting rid of beef and stuff, pretending that the farting cows are bringing about the end of the world. And yeah, everything out there, people need to wake up now. It's time to stop being stuck and thinking, oh, I'm vegan for the animals and isn't it all lovely? No, go out, look at the truth, examine your beliefs, because you'll end up with no food soon. Believe me, if they're coming for the beef, they're also going to be coming for organic veg and stuff, because they want you to eat their soy-based, grain-based slop, because that's what they make their money out of. So even if you like your organic fruit and veg and all that, they'll be next on the list. Don't let them come for my beef, because you're the next one down the line. All right, so wake up, and let's look at exactly what our diet really is, because it's really important right now, because they're getting a lot of other hoaxes under the radar and they're slipping it onto mainstream TV, and this is war. Yeah. We are at war at the moment. And you know, I promised I wouldn't go too much into all this jabby business and whatever, and the chaos that's causing, because that really is disrupting immune systems now, and we're seeing an enormous amount of damage. But we'll leave that one at that. But you know, everything they're hitting us with at the moment, we need to stand up and get back to it. And vegans, carnivores, omnivores, whoever it is, we need to stand up together against this, not be bickering with each other.
Yeah, that makes sense. I think a lot of people as well, they don't actually go and do their own individual research and have an open mind to, you know, I could be wrong, I'm always learning. They just hear something off the TV or Netflix, and then that's their belief then. They're programmed to have that belief subconsciously, but it's not really their beliefs. It's not what they've studied or they've experienced. It's just what they've been told to think, basically.
Well, it's becoming, scientism is becoming a religion. It's not real science, because everybody's being censored at the moment who's speaking out against the narrative. And so, you know, we're being actually educated not to use our own intuition. We're being given food that shuts down our mental capacities, so that we swallow the party line and end up fearful of all the crap that they put out on the TV. And we're being given this because they need to control. They need to control us, because if we wake up to it, it's over for them. You know, it's absolutely over. They can't control a population that's intelligent and well fed and well researched and using their own intuition. We're told not to use our own intuition. As soon as you come up against one of these scientism freaks, they're going, that's just useless anecdotes. However much it is, you know, even if it's to do with the millions of adverse events reported to the yellow card and VAERS system at the moment about the arm rape, you know, and they go, oh, well, that's just anecdotal evidence. Come on, it's 2 million now or more. Are all these people lying? And all the ones we've seen who have been hurt haven't even reported it to these people. It's probably just about 1% of what's happened. So, you know, the plural of anecdotes is data. And when enough people are saying that, when I got 15,000 people or whatever on my Carnivore group talking about all these wonderful benefits they've got, and then somebody comes up and says, well, Dr. Greger, the vegan doctor, says there's a study that says this isn't happening, I'm going to have to say, fuck off, you know, because I'm seeing it with my own eyes. Wake up. What am I supposed to do? Go, oh, thanks, Dr. Greg. I want to look like you. I want to talk like you. And I want to have real thick glasses, and I want to have liver spots, and I want to believe you. And I want to eat all that stuff that makes me fart 24 hours a day. And you're right. You know, I'm sorry, I'm getting a bit absurd now, but I'm just, sometimes it just winds me up so much that these people are pushing this crap and it's not obvious to other people. And it's to do with squashing our intuition. We need our intuition. This is a huge gift that we have. We ran on it for millennia without scientific studies. Can you imagine, you know, going back into a hunter-gatherer society and say, well, you know, where's the actual proof that this works? Where's the actual proof that you can fire an arrow at this monkey? You have to calculate this. You can't do that without proper scientific studies. No, shoot the fucking monkey. You can do it. You can eat it. You can, you know, just life experience. And we're told not to trust our own senses.
Yeah.
It's insane. The world is, but hopefully it's becoming so insane that it's waking people up, and that this is a time that it's going to wake people up. And that will be a really, really beautiful thing to come out of all of this.
Your intuition as well, it's always, well, it's never wrong. It seems to know things that the logical mind doesn't, even if it doesn't make sense logically. That seems to always be right. It seems to know something that you don't know.
Yeah,
interesting. But yeah, I think that's all from me. I don't think there's anything else I really wanted to speak about now. I think that's everything. Is there anything else you wanted to touch on?
Well, you know, once I start, I just, you know, it's time to just get one of those shepherd's crooks they used to get and pull people off by the neck when they've had enough of them on stage, you know, when they're crap on some talent show or something. It's 2 o'clock. We've been going since midday. I've just realized we're over 2 hours now.
Yeah.
And my kids are getting restless. I suppose I better go and sort them out. But, you know, you could keep me going for ages. But yeah, we've covered a whole load there, and that's probably as much as people can stand, even if they've got this far. Well done. So
yeah. It's a pleasure anyway, Phil. I appreciate your time coming on here. Thank you very much for that, and I'll keep in touch.
Yes, mate. Yes. Well, we'll have to meet up and have a drink sometime or whatever. And yeah, because you're only down the road, aren't you?
You still drink on the carnivore diet?
Some people do, some people don't. I only started really when I got on the carnivore diet, as I said earlier, because it's the only time my liver's ever been able to take it. So it's my only use for plants whatsoever. But yeah, so now and again it can be fun, but yeah, not optimal. But if you do everything else right, you can get away with a few little mistakes.
You have beer, or do you stick to
no, nothing made from grains, just some red wine, some brandy maybe, you know. But no, totally unnecessary, and definitely don't do it while you're actually trying to heal the gut. Once you've healed the gut, it won't wreck the gut. All right, done to moderation. It'll wreck you far less than it will with grains and seed oils and stuff like that. But yeah, anyway. But if anybody, you know, wants to drop in or have a chat, or if anyone fancies a consult, it's all on my website at pureactivitynoneword.net. I believe philescott.com points to it as well. But come and see us at The Human Unleashed and the Red Pill Revolution, thehumanunleashed.com, redpillrevolution.com. Look me up on Facebook, and you can see all this going on. People think it's absolutely crazy. You know, we've got the people chatting about it, hundreds, thousands, tens of thousands of people showing that this is working. And yeah, it's time to start waking up about this stuff, people, because it's war, and it's not a country against a country. It's us against these corporations. And if we don't wake up, we're going to let them win.
Cheers, Phil. Thank you very much.
All right, Carl. Well, you're very welcome.
I'll catch you again soon.
All right, see you again.
Take it easy, Phil. Thank you. See ya.